Represent the Comfort Women Justice Coalition today. Thank you so much for the organizers and everybody who came out in this weather. I'm also a member of a Zainichi Korean organization called Eclipse, and we have worked on a statement urging the San Franciscans to actually act on the Comfort Women resolution and to erect a memorial. As you may know, around the world, the denialist movement has been successful in squashing the efforts to memorialize this history that must never be banished. And San Francisco, in that light, represents hope and the unity and the strength that people can have in refusing to accept such an unjust treatment of the Comfort Women and their principal demands for justice. So I would like to read the statement by Eclipse Rising. Do not silence the voices of the grandmothers. Comfort Women Memorial is ever more urgent and necessary in light of the Korea-Japan bilateral agreement. The Comfort Women system is one of the largest and most elaborate systems of exploiting and trafficking in colonized women for the military in the history of human history. Its central figure was the organized and rationalized procurement, imprisonment, constant rapes and gang rapes, torture, and brutalization of girls with no prior sexual experience for over a decade with no international intervention. The agreement is nothing more than Japan's attempt at permanent historical erasure of the most atrocious violation in human history against mankind. As such, it amounts to unjust silencing of the victims and their principal demands for apology and atonement, and turns its back on the fundamental rights of women as human rights. We stand in solidarity with the victims in rejecting the agreement for its failure to restore their dignity and human rights. None of the victims was consulted, while this agreement was ostensibly hailed as settling the Comfort Women issue itself. In fact, the agreement leaves out Comfort Women in other parts of Asia in 11 countries in all. The agreement also prohibits South Korea from ever raising the issue in international forums, including the United Nations, that leaves the grandmothers without a governmental advocate in this entire world. That is not acceptable. We deny the assertion by the governments of the United States, Korea, and Japan that this is one step in the right direction. To the contrary, the agreement takes several steps backwards. It cannot be said to be official government action, lacking cabinet approval or parliamentary endorsement, and to date, the Japanese legislature has not once passed a resolution acknowledging state responsibility for this crime. Thus, it remains subject to equivocation, and it has happened many times before, as we all know. In addition, Japan has successfully resisted inclusion of the term coercion to describe the Comfort Women system. Its denial is a dubious reversion of the 1993 Kono Statement. And in fact, the Japanese conservatives, as well as the Japanese parliament, reject this statement. Thus, we argue that Japan is incorrectly claiming that this agreement maintains the spirit of the Kono Statement. And the Japanese government's payment of $8.3 million into a settlement fund, while this is widely recognized as compensation to the victims, it is then peculiar that Foreign Minister Kishida has claimed repeatedly that this is not reparation, but rather a part of a Korea-Japan joint collaborative venture. This is billed as a humanitarian support, and the only conclusion possible is that for the Japanese government, this constitutes charity and also hush money. The agreement leaves out any requirement for current or ongoing documentation and education of Japan's responsibility for the Comfort Women system. The facts suggest that Japan is not likely to do so voluntarily. In fact, Abe has led the way towards denial and erasure of not only the victims, but the facts of history inconvenient for its PR objectives. In 2015, Japan tripled its public relations budget to over $500 million to improve Japan's image. And this includes an elaborate global campaign regard to comfort women and other atrocities such as the Nanjing massacre. In fact, the latest history textbook, which I have read by Ikuho Publishing, actually omits some of the facts of World War II and leaving a whole post-war generation of Japanese citizens prey to national amnesia, if not denial, about Japan's own history. Japan's demand to remove the Comfort Women Memorial erected near the Japanese embassy in Seoul only reinforced doubts as to whether Japan has engaged earnestly and in good faith, as accepted in all diplomatic negotiations. The bilateral agreement runs counter to the findings of independent organizations who contributed to the 2014 recommendations to the United Nations human rights bodies on the issue of Japan's military sexual slavery, and in particular having Japan acknowledge its role in documenting history so that such atrocities are never repeated again. Also, the UN Special Rapporteur on Systematic Rape, Sexual Slavery, and slavery-like practices during armed conflict has established that in totality, the Comfort Women system constitutes crimes against humanity, and that Japan does bear legal liability for this crime. Various UN treaty bodies, as well as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, have repeatedly urged Japan to remedy the crime, including reparation to the victims, official acknowledgement of legal liability, investigations and prosecutions of those responsible, as well as education. And yet, this agreement does absolutely none of those things as successfully as it permanently banishes the very existence of the victims and their principal demands for justice into an irrelevant past. Navi Pillay, former High Commissioner for Human Rights at the United Nations, stated, "This is a current issue, as human rights violations against these women continue to occur as long as their rights to justice and reparations are not realized." As the first city in the country to ratify the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women and people of conscience, we call upon all San Franciscans to stand with the grandmothers and build upon the unanimously passed Comfort Women Memorial Resolution right here in San Francisco, and urgently support the building of the Comfort Women Memorial. It is an ever more urgent task at hand, and concrete collective action we can take to resist and condemn historical erasure and denialism, and above all, refuse to justify or condone banishment of women's voices for justice for the sake of political expediency. We will not relent in seeking justice for all comfort women through education and memorialization, so that we can one day eradicate modern-day human trafficking and create a world in which geopolitical and national security interests do not trump the fundamental rights of all girls and women, and eliminate the use of rape and violence against women as a central strategy for war. Thank you.